In this chapter, we're going to be going over what it is that we need to do as far as planning the numbers of people and that we need for various organizations, and then also how do we go find them. Okay, so it's the planning and recruiting of some of the people that we're going to be needing for our organization. Now, when you think about the planning, the whole idea behind it is to make sure that we're meeting business goals. All right. We have a particular strategy and goals to achieve as far as an organization is concerned. We're going to need the right people and the right numbers of people in order to get that. And so the first thing we have to do is start forecasting what kind of people and how many are we going to need in order to achieve our goals. Now, when you start thinking about the forecast, we have to think about the supply and the demand aspect. People are like any kind of product. There's going to be a supply and there's going to be a demand for it, typical economics. And so we are going to have to be putting together forecasts as far as what kinds of people and what kinds of jobs, what kinds of skills, knowledge, and abilities do we need for this particular job. Then we have to think about, okay, so where are those folks? What kind of supply is there for that? That can give us some forecast as far as, okay, do we have too many people or do we need more people in order to achieve our goals? So when you start thinking about forecasting, the whole idea behind it is to kind of look into the future. And so we're forecasting what kind of demand do we have and then what kind of supply is out there. And then, all right, so do we have too many or are we going to need more for that? Now, what we're typically doing is doing a trend analysis. In other words, okay, so based on the past, what do we expect to happen for the future? And our leading indicators can give us some ideas as far as what's actually happening with that. If you've had some economics, you understand what leading indicators and lagging indicators are. Basically, it's things that kind of tip off. Is the economy going to grow? Is it going to retract? Also thinking about our business. Are we expected to grow or are we expected to contract? And so there are going to be some indicators that say, okay, here's some things that's going to be happening over the next year, 2-year, 5-year length of time. Now, in the book, it had that transitional matrix, basically looking at, okay, so where were we in the past? Where are we now as far as our people are concerned? How many left? How many were promoted? That sort of thing. And so you start to think about, okay, do we have a surplus or do we have a shortage as far as people are concerned? Now, when you start thinking about the planning aspect, we need to think about our numerical goals. In other words, okay, are we going to need X number of people in this area over here in manufacturing? Are we going to need Y number of people over in sales? So we have to figure out where it's going to go and who it is that we might need as far as the human resources are concerned. We also have to think about, okay, so when is this going to be needed? Is it going to be needed very, very soon, which means that we're going to have to do some activities that will really bring in some people fairly quickly, or is it going to be slower? So in other words, we can really think about and grow slowly as far as the numbers of people. When you start thinking about if you have too many people and you need to reduce that surplus, what are some ways that you can do it? There's some things that are fast and there's some things that we can do that are slow. We can do some things very, very quickly. The thing is, it causes a high level of stress and suffering amongst the employees. So, for example, downsizing. It can happen real quick as far as getting rid of a bunch of folks. The thing is, there are a lot of folks who are suffering. Not only those who were downsized, also those who were left. It's called survivor guilt. Been through that when I was with the pharmaceutical company. Remember, I date back to the Marion Labs days. We went through several downsizings, and it was very, very difficult for those who left and those who were left. So it can cause a lot of stress and things like that. The things that cause less stress and suffering actually are very slow. So, for example, if you're expecting to have a surplus, you can have a hiring freeze. There are a lot of companies that will do that. They will just say, okay, we're not hiring anybody at this point in time. We're going to let some natural attrition happen. In other words, more people are going to be leaving, which they typically do. And so that will reduce the numbers of people that we have. A lot of times they'll also do some early retirement offerings. In other words, if you go ahead and retire now, say you're 55, and you go ahead and retire now, we will go ahead and give you your full retirement as if you were retiring at 65. So there's some options there that reduce any kind of surpluses that you might have. You also have to think about, okay, what if we're going to have a shortage? What is it that we can do to make sure that we beef up the labor supply that we have so that we can not have that shortage of labor that we need so we can achieve the goals that we have? There's some things that we can do that are pretty quick, and there's some things that take more time. The things that take more time are harder to change down the road. So for example, one of the things we can do is start hiring new people. It takes longer to hire new people. The thing is, once you get them on board, it's harder to reduce any kind of overage that you may have as far as numbers of people. So in other words, let's say that you start on a big hiring kick and you get a bunch of folks in. Well, let's say that then the company has a downturn. It's much harder to get rid of some of those folks at that point in time. There's some things that are pretty quick as far as avoiding the shortage. In other words, getting everybody to work overtime. It makes it real easy to change down the road. However, it also causes more stress as far as the people are concerned. Now, another thing that you can do is temps, temporary employees. That's fairly quick as far as getting in some temporaries, depending upon the jobs. And it makes it much easier to change down the road. Sprint is huge as far as doing temps and contracting, as far as bringing people in. They have a ton of temporary and contract workers because their labor supply has shifted so much over the years. They need to be able to make changes relatively quickly. Now, when you start thinking about downsizing, it can be very, very difficult on folks. It's a great way to reduce some of the costs. The thing is, it hurts the long-term organizational effectiveness. When I was at the pharmaceutical company and we were going through the downsizing, one of the things that senior management was saying was, we need to reduce the numbers of people that we have. So we're going to get rid of work. In other words, there are going to be things we need to find work that we're not, that we can get rid of, because we just don't want to add everything to the people who are left. Well, you know how that worked out. That didn't happen at all. I mean, it was the people who were left actually wound up working a heck of a lot more because we just didn't get rid of some of the work. Some of the alternatives to downsizing, things like reducing hours. When I was at the pharmaceutical company, one of the things that they did was, at one point, they were about to have a blockbuster drug that was coming out. The thing is, they needed a lot of cash and keep that cash going while it was going through approvals through the FDA. And so one of the things they did for about 6 months or so, they cut everybody's hours back to 35 hours. In other words, they took a little over 10% out of everybody's paycheck. And what that did was that kept from having a downsizing at that point, because they knew that they would need those people once that drug came out. So they reduced hours. Another thing is early retirement programs. Johnson County Community College, over the past couple of years, offered some early retirement programs for some of the instructors that we have. Now, some of the options for avoiding the shortage, using lots of temps and contract workers, makes it real easy as far as if you find out that you have too many, you need to reduce it. All you do is just say, sorry, temps, we no longer need you. When contract workers, which typically have something like 90-day type contracts, once the contract comes up, they don't renew it. Outsourcing is another thing that will happen a lot of times. In other words, let's say that you're manufacturing a product. You can find somebody, and all of a sudden things are going big right now. One of the things you can do is find somebody who can help you manufacture some of that. So you send that work over to them. They do the manufacturing and things for you. Another thing is overtime and expanding the hours that you're doing. Again, these are some short-term types of things that you can do. One of the things that needs to happen as you're doing the forecasting, you're thinking about the numbers of people that you have, is what's called talent management. What are you doing to really think about who are the people that we have? What are we doing as far as their development for the long term? We have to think about bench strength. In other words, you have a particular position. If that person leaves the organization for some reason, who is it that we have that can come in behind them and be able to take over that job? So talent management is going to be really important. Now, when you start thinking about getting those folks, all right, one of the things we have to think about is affirmative action. Now, affirmative action basically means that what you're doing is you are expanding where it is that you look as far as people are concerned in some areas where you did not look before, so that you have more balance as far as your workforce is concerned, particularly regarding minorities. When you start thinking about recruiting, the whole idea behind that is to find the right people, get the right people on the bus going forward. And when you think about recruiting, there are three key things to think about. What are your policies that will actually attract and keep people in your organization? What are your resources as far as where are you looking for some of those folks and how are you looking for those folks? And then also, who is it that you have as far as your recruiters who are actually going out and finding those folks? So when you think about it, you have your personnel policies, your recruiters, and then also the sources, what it is that you're using to go find some of those people. Now, one of the best things you can do to bring people in and to keep them there is more internal recruiting, the whole idea of promoting from within. What it does is it gives people the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to move up in the organization. It gives a lot more opportunities that are out there. Once organizations are known for internally recruiting and promoting from within, more and more people will want to work for that organization. Another thing to think about is, what are your pay strategies? If you are a lead the market, as far as your pay strategies are concerned, you're going to attract more people. Now, some of the things to think about with the recruiting and with the hiring aspect is several things. First of all, employment at will. Basically, there is no contract between the person and the organization, and the person can leave whenever he or she wants to, and the organization can let them go whenever they want to. Another thing to think about is your social presence and reputation. The better reputation that you have, the more that you will attract the better talent. So where do you go find some of these folks? First of all, within the organization, they will have, hopefully, job postings. When I was at Hallmark, in various areas, they would have bulletin boards where they had open positions that were posted, and you could apply for those open positions. So it was very transparent. Here's some internal positions that are open. Who wants to apply for them? It's a real great opportunity for folks, number one, to grow. Number two, you already know, as an organization, you already know who those people are, and they understand the culture. It makes it really easy to promote from within when you start having those internal sources like that. Then you have your external sources, where you have direct applicants and referrals. In other words, a direct applicant is somebody who sees an organization out there, they walk in and fill in an application. You have employee referrals. In other words, the employees that already work there are saying, hey, here's a person over here that would be really good in this open position. You have networking platforms such as LinkedIn. You have your advertising that's online. Then you also have various employment agencies and colleges and universities. Okay, here at Johnson County, we do have listings of companies that are hiring in the positions that they're hiring for. Now, when you think about the percentage of employees hired, referrals by employees, if you notice, that is the biggest one. I've always told folks, the best jobs are found by somebody that you know that's actually working in that organization. They are referring you to that. This is why networking is so vital for all of us. Getting to know more people, learning where it is that they work, making those relationships, let them know you. That's exactly where the best jobs actually come from. Search engines. One of the problems that I see as far as hiring is concerned is there are all kinds of jobs that are out there that are advertised on Indeed and various other job sites. And you put in an application, you send a resume, and it just goes into a black hole. You have to remember that for a particular job, they post that on the internet like that. The recruiters might get thousands of applications coming in. And trying to go through all of those, they're using artificial intelligence and computer algorithms that are saying, okay, this is a good one, this is not. And so a lot of times you send in those applications and those resumes for those internet postings, and they just go into the black hole. Recruiters are a little bit lower as far as external recruiters who are finding someone and then matching them up. The thing is, they are much more expensive for organizations. And then LinkedIn, it's showing real low here as far as the LinkedIn professional network. The thing is, if you use LinkedIn to connect with other people who work at those organizations, that actually becomes referrals by employees. So one of the things I always push folks is do everything you can to network. Get to know a lot of people in a lot of different organizations so that you can get those referrals to find the really cool jobs. Now, one of the things that HR does when they start looking at hiring is they look at yield ratios and cost per hire. Yield ratios is saying, okay, so based on the number of people that applied, how many are actually working here? In other words, they went through the interview process, they were given an offer, they accepted the offer, and now they're working here. So you're looking at yield ratios and then also the cost per hire. Executive recruiting firms are the most expensive. Getting some of those applications through Indeed and some of these other online job postings are relatively cheap. The best way, the most efficient, where you're balancing efficiency with cost, is the employee referrals. Now, when you start thinking about the recruiter themselves, there are certain characteristics that the recruiters need to have. First of all, they need to be people. In other words, they need to like other people. They need to be able to speak well. And they also need to be able to sell the job and the organization, as long as they're realistic as far as what it is that they're doing. You don't want to sell somebody a bill of goods, all right? So they need to be realistic, however, upbeat about the organization. They need to understand the personnel policies and things that go along with it so they can explain to someone, here's what it is this organization is about. This is how you're going to be treated. Here are the benefits, things like this. Some of the things that recruiters need to do, if you ever decide to get into recruiting, it can be a very lucrative field where you are actually, it's kind of a sales type of thing. The thing is, you need to be very honest with folks that go along with it. Recruiters should be able to give timely feedback to the applicants as far as, okay, here's what you did well. Here's some of the things that you might think about for improvement down the road. They need to not be offensive, okay, obviously. And one of the things to think about is working with teams. In other words, you have several folks who are working together to try to find the people that are necessary for the organization. So those are some of the key points for this chapter. If you have questions, please give me a shout.